the platform. Thank you, Lesley. Do you want a glass of water or anything, Lesley? No.
Hello, you wonderful people. Thanks for being patient with me. Hi. I just found that I am Australian, the backing so emotional. So I think I would just like to pay our respects to the Wurundjeri people whose land we're on and honour their elders, past, present and emerging. So, the topic for today is only real. And this is my idea of, love is only real. Only love is real. This is my idea of linking Unity 5 principles that our inspirational Reverend Rhonda spoke of last week and that of Dr. Brian Weiss. And I've plagiarised one of his titles of his books, Only Love is Real. So as Rhonda mentioned, the Fillmore's great-granddaughter, an ordained Unity minister, was asked to summarise Unity teachings. She condensed the philosophy into 5 essential points, or what we now call principles, and that was first published in 1990. Ellen Davenport, in her book, The 5 Principles, says that as well as offering tools for daily living, the 5 principles suggest answers to the great questions that have been with humans ever since the dawn of consciousness. And they are, what is the greater presence that we sense around us? How can we communicate with this presence? Who and what are we? Why do things happen in our life the way they do? And what are we here on earth to do? And we have a slide of a condensed form of the principles. God is all good and active in everywhere. I'm naturally good because God's divinity is in me and everyone. I create my experience by what I choose to think and what I feel and believe. Through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. And I do and give my best by living the truth that I know. I make a difference. So God is everywhere and always present in every circumstance. And this divine energy underlies and animates all existence. We now know that everything in the universe is made up of energy moving through from dense objects like this to our emotions. And as I've said many times, the denser ones are anger and guilt, and the lighter are love and gratitude. And another name for God is love, because that's the highest vibration. Human beings are innately good, the second one, because they're connected to an expression of spirit. We create, and number 3, we create our experiences by the activity of our thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. And I've told this story many times, but it was this teaching that actually brought me to Unity. I was here helping with Gawler Foundation cancer support groups and went over and pulled out The Story of Unity by James Dillard Freeman. And there I read about Myrtle's healing and how she changed her thinking and spoke to every part of her body. And cured her tuberculosis. And we were teaching the people in the cancer support groups then that Candace Pert only managed to convince the medical profession in 1985 that how you think affects your immune system. So I came along the next Sunday and here I am. So principle 4 is prayer and meditation collect and align us to God mind and therefore bring forth wisdom, healing, prosperity and everything good. And there's now plenty of evidence about the benefits of prayer and meditation, and what used to be considered woo-woo is now taught in medical schools and hospitals. And that's happened about 20 years or so. Number 5, knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, is not enough. We must live the truth that we know. And as Davenport says, the first 4 principles are about shifting consciousness before changing behaviour. She also points out that we are in prayer without ceasing, communing with a responsive universe. The goal that our thoughts affect our outcome. The goal is to live consciously and take action guided by our inner being, even knowing that we often don't express perfection. She also says living the truth is more about being than doing. It's how we show up for whatever we choose to do. And that's that statement really resonates with me because, and I know I've told you this before, when I came back from Findhorn and I met Eileen Cady, and I thought, okay, I'll try going into meditation to get some guidance, and I had retired and I was a bit scared the guidance would tell me to go to Africa and teach English where you don't have showers or something. And the message that came back was so powerful that it's not what you do so much as how you do it. And that's exactly Alan Davenport. The aim is to have ego in service to the soul. Alan Davenport says there are no formulas for using the principles. We all came to Earth with a different purpose and path. We all hold a different mix of consciousness. So we each attract different people and events into our life and make different choices for action. The universe responds to our energetic vibration, and as Joe Dispenza says, love and gratitude are the magnets that attract our desires to us. And this is what Dr. Brian Weiss says. He was a well-known and highly qualified psychiatrist. He says he was left-brain, obsessive-compulsive, and completely sceptical of seemingly unscientific fields such as parapsychology and spirituality. He treated the now famous Catherine for a year for her fear of choking and gagging, and then decided he'd try hypnosis because she was not improving. She remembered some past experiences like choking when diving into water and her father holding his hand over her mouth when she was about 3. But despite these memories surfacing, she didn't improve. So Weiss decided that she must have more memories in her subconscious, so he tried regression again. And he thought she'd just go back to being an infant. She went to a lifetime 4,000 years ago in Egypt when she died while holding her baby when swept away by a tidal wave. I wonder if that's sort of Noah's Ark, but anyway. She remembered 2 other lifetimes and talked of floating above her body, just as the near-death experiences have been documented by many writers. Weiss says that he was shocked and sceptical, but Catherine's symptoms improved dramatically. He famously changed his mind when Catherine told him of a between-life state where she encountered Weiss's father and son, who had both died. He knew there was no way that Catherine could possibly have known about the deaths, or that his son was born with his heart turned backward. While talking from this place of light, she said, the masters also told her, there are many gods, for God is in each of us. Weiss was afraid to go public with his experiences because of fear of losing his livelihood and being laughed out of his profession. After 4 years of sitting on even more information, he went public with his first book, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I've got it here. I've got a signed copy because I went to hear him. He sends me his love. So, the rest is history. Many colleagues actually came forward with similar stories, and he's now world famous, holding conferences where he does both regression and progression on the audiences with amazing results. He says that he's learnt that the past, present and future are one, and what happens in the future can influence the present just as the past influences it. The future is flexible. Compassion, empathy, forgiveness, non-violence, love and spirituality are the lessons we all must learn. And as St. Paul says, the greatest of these is love. And Brian Weiss says, only love is real. And practicing these qualities allows us to live our truth, as the fifth unity principle says. Weiss agrees with Ellen Davenport, the soul is timeless. Ultimately, there's just one soul, one energy, and many people call this God and others call it love. The name doesn't matter, and we've got a sort of a slide symbolising energy. Yeah, so we just go into different forms to demonstrate that energy. The soul, he says, is a body of energy that blends with the universal energy, then splits off again when it returns to a new life. Before the soul merges, we have a past life review. From this, we learn of our mistakes in a caring and loving way. Our souls evolve by making loving decisions. And there have been many books now written on near-death experiences that also support what Weiss has learned from his patients. He talks of a patient, Max, who was a doctor and suffered along with his patients. He was exhausted emotionally and physically. He progressed to a future life where he saw himself as a teacher of healers. While under hypnosis, he reported that, and this is a quote from Max, he taught that consciousness separates from the body. First, it hovers over the body, reviewing its emotional life and preparing to go higher. Then it leaves the emotional body behind as well, all the while becoming lighter and lighter. In this state, Max says, I call it the mental body. Finally, it separates from this realm and is free to adjust its natural vibration to the spheres, so it can go into even higher states. When Max came out of hypnosis, he exclaimed, "What the hell was that all about?" However, he came back and did a past life regression that explained his guilt about patience. He no longer suffered guilt, remorse or depression that had plagued his life before voyages to the past and future, and the skeptic was healed. And then regarding empathy, Weiss says that it's the ability to put yourself in someone's place. Those lacking empathy can't evolve spiritually. And the core principle underlying is empathy, is that we're all connected. And I think I've told this one too. I was in this meditation, a really powerful meditation years ago, and while I was meditating before that, I used to have this strong feeling in my heart. Anyway, during that meditation, I felt as though my heart totally exploded, and I ran around as though everybody was my child or my relative, and I couldn't do enough for people. And Indonesia overran East Timor at the end of that week, and I went to all these ecumenical services, lighting candles, and I truly felt as though every candle was one of my children. And I went around like that for about 3 weeks, and I could feel my heart beginning to close down. I couldn't possibly go around feeling like that all the time. And I sort of thought, Teresa of Avila felt bliss when she went into a different state of consciousness, and mine was really a fair bit of agony. But I shared it with Sky St. John when he was out here from Hawaii. And he said empathy heals the individual at the same time that it heals the world. So hopefully I was doing something for the world as well. World Vision did hand deliver the receipts for the money I kept sending for those East Timorese. So going back to Weiss, a patient called Hugh, a psychic medium, who was also drained because of his work, went back to the lost kingdom of Atlantis, just like Edgar Cayce and people have written about. Hugh was selfish in that life, so realised that he was overcompensating in his present life. So the lesson, we must learn compassion for others and for ourselves. That means having patience and understanding for ourselves and others, and thus navigating challenges with grace and acceptance. And it's the same with forgiveness. Weiss says that we repeat lifetimes with the same people in different forms until we learn to forgive. And my mother is a fabulous example of that, of forgiveness. She was 2 when her own mother died. She was put into Kildonan orphanage until she was 8 with her siblings, who she never saw in the orphanage. And her father remarried, and it was a truly wicked stepmother that she got in that marriage. And she was whipped with a bamboo rod. They all were, all the family. And when Mum was about 93 in an aged care facility, she had this big scar on her leg at that age. And I said, "How did you get that?" And she said, "Oh, Nanny," just as though it was normal. And apparently my uncle Len, who was Nanny's child, had come home and caught Nanny whipping my mother, and broke the rod, and she was never belted again. But near the end of her life, I said to Mum, what was the lesson you learned? And she said, forgiveness. And she truly lived forgiveness. She never missed a week of going to visit Nanny, taking a cake or whatever, when she'd left. So I had no idea that she'd been mistreated because of her attitude was just so forgiving and so just like any mother and any daughter and mother relationship. So we says it's through relationships that we learn to express and receive love, to forgive and to help and to serve. From his experiences with patients in between life states, he's come to believe that we choose our families for each lifetime. We choose to live the patterns that will allow the most growth. And just as we must have self-compassion, we must have self-forgiveness as well. And I sometimes feel guilty when I judge somebody. And last week was a great example. I was in Target and asked a shop assistant for help, and her indifference was more than amazing. And I felt like being really sarcastic and saying something like, "Thanks so much for that wonderful help," or something. But I walked away, and then I thought, okay, I don't know anything about what her days have been like, or indeed what her life has been like. So instead of cursing her, I sent her a blessing. And I also said the Ho'oponopono prayer to forgive myself. And I often use that when I find myself judging. You know that one? I'm sorry, I love you, I thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, I thank you, yeah. As Gerald Jampolsky said, love is letting go of fear, and similarly, we can't be angry and loving at the same time. So we all know there are many facets to love: romantic love, love of a parent for a child, love of nature, music, poetry, and all things between heaven and earth. Love is the ultimate religion for Brian Weiss and for all of us. In an exercise with a patient, Christina, Weiss did a progression thinking she would go to her next life. Instead of going a few years forward, she went to the year 3200. The earth was green and people communicated telepathically. She could see liquid light pouring into plants. Sometimes the liquid poured into the people themselves. The people were spiritual. She couldn't see any illness, anger, violence or war. Everything was peace. So going back to living the truth, as I've said, I love the question, how might I serve? And we all have many ways to do this, and our unity community here wouldn't survive without the dedication of you folk, our members, our committee and Bill. And it was also wonderful to see all the acts of service on the Australia of the Year Awards last night. So many different ways that people are serving. And Neil Danaher was just amazing. One of the things he said was, it's no use just talking about things, you have to act. But then he added along the way, it's so important to be able to smile and feel positive. So, yeah, how you do it, even for Neil, was important. As Ellen Davenport says, sometimes living our truth may not require any physical action, only metaphysical action. When enough people think a certain way, we reach a tipping point in awareness. Then outward physical change begins to happen. And apparently economists call this the consumer price index. The fall of the Berlin Wall is often cited as a result of group consciousness, and there's the Maharishi effect that is often quoted as well. And when people meditate together, the crime rates drop and all that. And he claimed that it only took the square root of 1% in order to change an area's consciousness. The same goes, however, for negative thoughts, and we're seeing that in the world at the moment. So living the truth might mean staying active regardless of society's expectations of ageing, loving others despite daily examples of inhumanity, living the truth we know that every person, place or thing is an expression of God the good and that we can create our own experience. And as Bill says, holding the high watch regardless of outward appearances. And I offer the thought that perhaps the greatest way to live our truth is to remember our own divinity. And I close with a quote from T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know that place for the first time. Thank you. We're going to have a song and then meditation, yeah?